Ah, Korea. This is going to be a fun one. When analyzing history, especially hotbeds of controversy, things often come to the surface years or even decades after the fact, as technology grows and archives open, shining new light on an otherwise already known concept. Hello friends, and welcome to the channel's first attempt at analyzing a specific point in history within a country and a bit of a narrative. By now, most of us are familiar with North Korea, South Korea, and the Korean War to some degree. Today we're specifically going to look at the Ongjin Peninsula and Haeju, now falling in modern-day North Korea, but we're also going to zero in on the importance it played in the Greater Korean War. So without further ado, let's get into it. As you can see, Ongjin is located just above the demilitarized zone, being about 100 kilometers south of Pyongyang, and because of its location, it's the only seaport on North Korea's west coast that doesn't freeze over the winter. This falls within the greater province of Hwanghae, and Haeju is indeed the capital of this province, having a population of about 236,000. The general area of Ongjin is quite flat, with shorter mountain peaks. However, behind the city of Haeju does rise the mighty Suyang, with its highest peak at over 900 meters. And here you also find the Suyeon-san Falls, dropping at 128 meters. This and Ongjin, also a county, are surrounded by the Yellow Sea, with several even smaller peninsulas making it up. And you know, since Korea is already a peninsula, you could say these are sub-peninsulas. As I mentioned at the top, this plays a crucial role historically. It's been inhabited since the Neolithic time period, but the city of Haeju came to be around the era of the Three Kingdoms, or Saman. The small chiefdom that governed it was conquered by the Goryeo dynasty in 757 AD, and King Taejo would give it the name it has today a few centuries later. For many centuries to come, this would become Korea's most important trading hub with China. This remained the fact all the way until 1906, when the Gyeongui rail line surpassed it. It was also a town very popular for Buddhist learning, and in the 10th century it was seen as one of 12 civilian-run capitals under the Goryeo dynasty, led at the time by King Seongjong. Now, much of the historical significance that's relevant here will be from the Korean War in the 20th century, so to keep this focused, we're going to skip the background around Japanese occupation, World War II, and the Allied powers during the 48th parallel. While all of these things do play into creating the powder-keg that would go off in June of 1950, they would require an analysis video of their own. There's only a slight difference in the then established 48th parallel and the now demilitarized zone, but that difference plays a rather crucial role for our purposes. The Ongjin Peninsula, prior to the war, was partitioned into the Republic of Korea, or South Korea, but now falls within the boundaries of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea. The war within American memory started right here on June 25th of 1950, when the Korean People's Army, North Korea's military, advanced southward to take the peninsula of Ongjin. However, what if I told you the fighting had actually been occurring at this exact same spot in May of the previous year, with many other skirmishes happening from the time the line was drawn? According to Bruce Cummings, this was also the point at which border fighting began in May of 1949. And the absence of independent observers has meant that both Korean sides have claimed ever since that they were attacked first. This greatly muddies the waters in terms of how we measure the war's beginning. Moreover, only a week prior to June 25th, this man, John Foster Dulles, paid a visit to Seoul in the south to have a discussion with Syngman Rhee, the new leader of South Korea, as the latter pledged for U.S. military defense, a little thing that would become a bit of a trend as the U.S. emerged as a superpower. Rhee also advocated for an attack on the North, saying that he would attack even if it brought a general war. Something worth noting here is that by now, both sides of the Korean peninsula had leaders with a strong desire for reunification under their own leaderships. In December of 1948, the Soviet Union had left its occupation zone in the north, and the US and the South had done the same in June the following year. I hope they didn't get used to that. The new leader of the North, Kim Il-sung, and Syngman Rhee both saw the entire nation as theirs, having been occupied for so long by different powers. According to Soviet documents, Pyongyang had also made plans to escalate civil conflict prior to the end of June of 1950, as they had grown tired of waiting for guerrilla fighters in the south to take back what they saw as occupied land. Attacking elements were said to be from the 3rd Brigade of the DPRK Border Constabulary. But South Korean sources asserted that the 17th Regiment of the Republic of Korea forces attacked on Ongjin and were in possession of Haeju City, which was north of the 38th parallel, corroborating those who believe the Republic of Korea forces began the actual war. But James Hausman, influential at shaping the Republic of Korea's army account, was that those who think the South may have started this war, I think they were wrong. Colonel James Peach, who was with the UN Observer Group, would claim that there's a bit of a mystery still about Haeju, that it might have been the 17th Regiment attacking it. It said they attacked Haeju and the North Koreans then responded. And that would lead us to the date that we see as the Korean War starting. The North, of course, claims that the South launched a general invasion, but no hard evidence exists on this assertion. There had been many small assaults across the parallel since 1949, and from this point, the North would meet the latest skirmish with a full invasion southward to capture the Ongjin Peninsula. Much of this likely has to do with the fact that Haeju is north of the 48th parallel, which blocked land access to the Haeju port in the Haeju Sea from the south, making it an area of constant battle. All of Ongjin was easy to occupy with just a slight push from the DPRK, thanks to the plains ahead of it and the mountains being behind Haeju. Making matters worse, the Republic of Korean army at this point was ill-equipped to handle this push, and many fled or mutinied due to the lack of training, lack of firepower, or simply the unpopularity of Syngman Rhee. As early as June 27th, Rhee and the Republic of Korean army located south of Seoul. General MacArthur, unsure of what he was up against, claimed that he could handle it with one arm tied behind his back. Further, New York Times editor Hanson Baldwin would surmise that Americans needed to convince these primitive, barbaric people that we, not the communists, are their friends. Yeah, I'm sure that attitude was real convincing. The Korean People's Army had an overwhelming advantage in terms of troops and its quality, as far more of them had recently been battle-hardened as guerrillas in China during Japanese occupation. The Republic of Korea Army had been preparing for a longer-scale war to take the whole of the Korean peninsula, despite MacArthur's optimism, while the Korean People's Army had intended for a quick and swift capture. Preparation fire was launched by the North in the morning of the invasion of Ongjin as they rushed into the 1st Battalion's main line of resistance. The bunker at the company headquarters had been hit directly, and 2nd Lieutenant Leader Kim Ho-kyung was killed. As more companies deployed to the front lines, the west side of Ongjin would prove far harder to defend after Durek Mountain fell to the Korean People's Army. The 1st Battalion would remain surrounded until the 2nd Battalion showed up for reinforcement, and with this, the full Korean War, as we call it, was completely kicked into motion. And I think we all know how that ended, so we can take a look at Haeju today. Because of Haeju's location being so close to the border with South Korea, it didn't see quite as much damage from the US bombing campaign that turned most of the DPRK into rubble. Therefore, it's one of the few cities that hold some of the nation's ancient historical sites. Its Folk Street is one of the country's closest looks into ancient customs, including the Puyong Temple Pavilion, a model of ancient Korean observatory, pagodas, and an ancient Korean Baal. Some of this was in fact damaged in the Korean War, but a lot of it has been restored to some degree with a scenic setting on a lily pond. In a similar vein, Sukdam-guyuk is where the Sukdam River meets 9 valleys, effectively creating pools. Specifically, the Eungbyong Valley beholds the Soyeon Confucian Academy, dating back to the 16th century, including a lecture hall, pavilion, several gates, and a yard. Talking about the physical land earlier, I mentioned Mount Suyang, which has one of 3 stone forts in the province, built during the Goguryeo dynasty to link the peaks. Now, not many outside visitors get to see this magnificent place, which isn't super surprising considering the country at hand here. However, if you find yourself lucky enough to visit, the Haeju Hotel is supposed to be a very swell spot. And yeah, in case if you forgot who the leaders were, the main square is going to boast statues and portraits of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il to remind you. But I'd hardly say that's anything super unique considering, well... The streets are said to be full of bikers. You can see some old Soviet Volga cars, the Revolutionary Museum, and lots of brutalist architecture for my fellow nerds who enjoy blocky buildings that look like an old Lego set. A little outside of the city is the largest state-run farm in Hwanghae region, called Kinam Stock Farm, raising goats, cows, poultry, and pigs. This livestock farm is probably one of the most authentic looks into the state farm model and its workers, very much off the beaten path. But we could probably say that about this entire spectacle as a whole, and I think that's going to do it for this time. Thank you for taking the time to check out this once bustling, later war-torn, and now quiet corner of an isolated nation. This is probably the most fun I've had researching in a bit, and it definitely took a hefty amount of digging. Have you ever seen this? Is it something you would be interested in visiting? Please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the other side.